Welcome back, folks. Today we're going to do the reassembly of the rear hub for the Yamaha YL1. In the view here you can see the various components that go into the respective hubs. This is a sprocket carrier here, and here's the components that will go with the sprocket carrier. As I mentioned, for the front hub I'm going to reuse the bearings. All these bearings, this one and these two, are original. I cleaned them up. They came out really good. That's a standard 6004. You can probably see that there. But they cleaned up and they're in very good shape. There's absolutely no reason I can't reuse these for a show bike. So obviously these will be greased using the technique I showed before by putting grease in my hand and squeegeeing the grease into the bearing race. I won't show that because I've demonstrated that in the previous video when I reassembled the front wheel hub. The seals will be replaced. In my right hand is the original seal. This is the new seal from Yamaha. It's identical. I don't think it's the same brand, but it is the right part number and all the nomenclature matches. For the hub itself, I have obviously cleaned up the brake lining where the brake shoes bear. You can see a little bit of flash rust on the inside of that rim there. I'm not going to worry about that. That's really inconsequential for what I'm going to be doing here. It really doesn't matter. And it's been cleaned and polished. Let's talk a moment about polishing before I go on any further. I don't over polish, and I know some people like the look of aluminum that looks virtually like chrome, and that certainly is fine if that's their thing. That was not original in most cases. If you look at the original polishing that was done on these bikes, they were not polished to a mere finish, and in fact they're often quite rough. Even underneath chrome you will see grinding marks almost all the time on original chrome. So when I cleaned and polished these components, and these are aluminum, I did not overdo it to make them look like chrome. I attempted to return them to the relative state that I thought they would have been in back when these bikes were new. Now these are a little bit smudged from being handled, of course, but I think I've got them pretty close to what they would have been as originally delivered once they're cleaned up after being handled. These are the components that go with the hub itself. Again, the two bearings, one is sealed in there. They've been cleaned in my parts tank and will have to be greased. This is the inner hub spacer that will go inside of here, like that, between the bearings, and that acts as a separator for the bearings and support for the hub itself. Seals. This is the original seal. This is a NOS, well actually it's not NOS, I misspoke myself. This is a new seal. You can get this seal still from Yamaha, but it was back ordered and I didn't want to wait. At least I believe you can still get it from Yamaha. And it was back ordered, and as I didn't want to wait weeks perhaps to get it, I went on eBay and got one. As you can see here, it's brand new, it's the same seal, it's the right part number, and I didn't pay much more for this than I would have going through Partzilla. I think I paid a buck or two more for this seal, and it saved me some time. And this is the other seal that will be used. This round, it's really a big O-ring, and this is a new part from through Partzilla that will replace the original here that you can see is quite damaged. These are the respective components that will go with each hub. I'm going to do something else a little bit different on this one than I did on the front wheel. If you recall, on the front wheel I heated the bearing boss with a hot air gun and then did the assembly. What I'm going to do on these hubs, I'm going to put the hubs themselves right in the oven, the same oven I use for powder coating, heat the entire hub up for perhaps an hour or so to around 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And then the whole hub then will get hot, of course, and I'll have to be careful I don't burn myself. And then assemble the bearings and the various components into the hub. That's an alternative to using a hot air gun. Either case, the parts are going to get real hot, that is the hubs, and you have to use care when handling them. I'm going to go ahead and transfer these two components to the oven and get them heated to around 300 degrees Fahrenheit or so, and then we'll come back when I start the assembly. I will probably start with the sprocket carrier first, and then we'll move on to the hub itself. I've got the hub out of the oven. It's been baking for about 45 minutes to an hour. It's good and hot. I got the seal all greased up. The seal in this case goes down that way. So I'm going to drop this in like this, and it dropped right into place. It doesn't get any better than that. Next thing we're going to do is install this retainer clip that fits into a ring machined on the inside, or a slot on the inside of this hub. Put on my gloves here, show that to you. You can perhaps see that. You can perhaps see that groove right there. Notice I'm wearing gloves because this hub is very hot right now. Just plain brown cheap jersey gloves, you can buy them anywhere. That ring, or that slot, is where that clip will go. So I just take a pair of circlip pliers. I will compress this ring, as you can see here, and fit it down inside of that groove. Like that. So you can see the circlip in the groove, and the bearings installed when it was already greased. And on the opposite side, it's good and hot, you can see the seal. The next thing to be installed will be the seal. I'm going to put just a little bit of grease around the outer edge here, not a lot, just a little bit to ease its insertion into the hub. If I have to, I can use a socket like this, which just fits nicely to seat it into place. I'm not sure I'm going to need to do that, but we'll see here in just a second. To grease the outside edges of a seal like this, if it's large enough, insert your fingers in the middle of the seal. Sometimes you might have to use one finger like this, different size fingers, and to get a good grip on it. And again, what I'm doing here is just applying a little bit of a film. I'm going to allow this hub to cool just a little bit so it's not quite so hot to handle before I go ahead and add the seal here to the hub. We'll let that cool a minute. While we're waiting for the sprocket carrier to cool a bit so we can insert the seal, I thought I'd just give you a little shot out the window of my shop. This is right immediately above my workbench. If you watch my polar vortex videos from earlier this winter, this is the same shot. It's going into mid-March here in Michigan. Yesterday, which was a Thursday, it was a very warm day. It was almost 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 16 degrees Celsius, warm and windy, and we had some thunderstorms and quite a bit of rain later in the day. It was sunny and pleasant early in the day. Today being a Friday, weather's changed considerably. Currently, as I'm shooting this video, it's about 38 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 3 degrees Celsius, and it is raining, and it's windy, and it's cold. So you can see the temperature shifted, what was that, 22 degrees Fahrenheit in less than 24 hours. We went from 60 degrees Fahrenheit to about 38. And in fact, it's supposed to get colder here today. It's supposed to get down near freezing or thereabouts with snow flurries later today and into tomorrow morning. So though spring is on its way, it has not quite cooled considerably. It's still quite warm to the touch, but I can pick it up and hold it for a few minutes without burning my hands. I'm going to go ahead and install the seal. It fits down over the top of this circlip here. Outer edges have been lubricated slightly. We'll get the seal started, or attempt to. Like that. It's not square, but it started. Now I'll take my socket See if we can't get this in. And I think we got it done. We got it seated evenly all the way around. I think we've got that part of it complete. There's the back side. You can see the sealed side of the bearing. That is the bearing right there. And then this is the outside. This is where the sprocket, the drive sprocket, will fit over and mount to these 4 holes here. So I think we've got that about ready. Here's the rear hub. First thing I'm going to do is put the sealed bearing into this boss right here, and this goes with the seal facing up. Okay, we got that bearing in. Now I'm going to flip the hub over, put my gloves on. The spacer has to go in like that, and then the unsealed bearing, that would be this one, goes in on this side, and that just dropped into place. Let's make sure it's in all the way, and I believe it is. So this one just dropped in. The other one didn't. It took a little more persuasion, but I've got both bearings in with the spacer in between. Now we have another seal that will go in here like this. So again, like I did before, I'm going to allow, this is the U seal by the way. Now I'm going to allow this hub to cool for a few minutes just like we did before, because it's very hot. And I'll apply a little lubricant to the outside edges of this new seal, and then we'll install that to seal this side of the hub. Now we're going to go ahead and install the seal. This is cooled for a few minutes, and do essentially what we did before. First thing I want to do is just get it started. Stacked. Alright, we got it done. Okay, the seal's seated all the way around equally. Now that I got the bearings and seal installed, I've let this cool a little bit further. I've just got to put this O-ring over this slot right here. It just rolls over like that. That rubber O-ring there is just a seal, so that when the sprocket carriers fit over the top like that, it'll seal against the inside of this hub right here to prevent contamination from getting into here. That's all that's for. It's like that. One thing I'm not sure I mentioned to you before, what I prefer to do when I do this kind of work is assemble as many components as I can at one time, so I don't have to worry about losing items later on and trying to find them. As long as the part won't get damaged later on during assembly to the bike, I do as much assembly as I can, as early as I can, to get the parts back together the way they belong. Anyway, let's move along here. I'm going to install these rubber bushings or shock absorbers. Yamaha actually calls these the clutch hub. The carrier for the sprocket fits down into these notches here, like that, and it acts as just to take up some of the slack in the drive mechanism. These are a little bit unique. I've never encountered this exact style before. You can see it's got fingers. These are the originals, by the way. I just cleaned them up. They're actually quite soft yet. This is a tough rubber, but they're in good condition. But they got fingers here that latch over those openings. You can see there I've already installed one to fiddle around with the technique. Most of the clutch hubs that I've dealt with in the past usually will have a rubber button that will have a flared end on it, and it'll insert through a hole and it'll snap through. So this is a little bit different way of doing it. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to apply a little dielectric silicone grease to these rubber fingers here to make them a little slipperier so that they'll engage a little easier there. Put a little bit there and a little bit there, and just spread it around. Like you can see there. Just a little lubrication. These can only go in one way, and that is like this. That's the only way they're going to fit. They obviously won't fit upside down like that. So you really can't get them in wrong. It does require a little bit of a technique I discovered, so I'm going to do my best to keep my head out of the way of the camera as I show you how that looks right now. So those two little fingers, I've got to get up on the inside of this lip of the hub, like you can see right here. So what I'm going to do, and there's no great, I haven't really discovered a great technique yet. If I can get that in video for you, is start it like that, see that, and just, if I can't get that to snap right up, and just work it up like that. After a little fiddling around, that was the best technique that I found. It was the easiest and least stressful to the parts. This dielectric grease, especially when you're dealing with rubber or vinyl components, is very, very helpful. So we'll do the same thing with this one. Flip the hub over like that. See if I can't get that started. Like that. So I've got the first lip started, and now I'm just going to, if I can't get that second one, use a bigger screwdriver, maybe that will help. There. Now I'll just go ahead and add the third one. It'll be the same process as you've just seen. Then we'll have the cushion, the pads in, or the clutch hub as Yamaha calls it, installed. I'm going to go ahead and install the brake shoes on a brake shoe backer plate that goes with the rear hub. As I did with the front wheel, I'm going to grease the shaft up a bit, and then we'll go ahead and mount the brake shoes. I did make a change of direction here on the brake shoes. What I decided to do is move the original front shoes to the rear hub. They're the same shoe, they're identical. Move the front shoes to the rear hub because they had quite a bit less wear on them, and then move the opposite, that is the rear shoes, to the front hub because it's not used as much. They are both in spec, and I'll show you how I determined that after doing a little more research. Both sets of brake shoes are still within manufacturer's specifications for size, so they're still safe, they will still work. And these shoes, which are originally on the front hub, have quite a bit more material left. So we'll get on with that now. I've got just a little grease added to the spindle of the brake arm. Insert it through like that. Turn it over, and now we'll be ready to put the brake shoes on. So we're going to go ahead and install the brake shoes. At the risk of being redundant, these have been scuffed, both shoes, and cleaned with brake cleaner. In fact, the entire set of shoes and springs were cleaned with brake cleaner. Wearing a mask, 220 grit sandpaper, and gloves, because I don't know if there's asbestos in these or not. Probably isn't. I'm not taking any chances. At this point, of course, you want to make sure your hands are clean because you don't want to recontaminate these brake linings with grease or oil from your hands and from previous work that you've been doing. To install the brake shoes, the round part here goes over the spindle. That's a pivot spindle, and this is the brake cam that activates the brakes. To install the brake shoes, I open them up like this so they're not face to face. Typically they would be like that. I open them up, making sure the springs stay connected. To install these shoes, open them up, and since I'm right-handed, I'm going to install the left set of shoes first. At the bottom here I have it, remember there's a notch in the shoes that line up with that groove in the pivot. That's a little different than most shoes. I think I mentioned that before when I did the front brakes. Nonetheless, I'm going to locate the left side here, like you can see, and then I'm going to just rotate the right shoes into position like that. There. Now those shoes are mounted. Now I'll take a little brake cleaner, and it's inevitable you're going to get a little contamination on those brake shoes. So I'm going to take a little brake cleaner and I'll wipe the brake shoes off. But those are ready to go. So we've got the brake shoes all cleaned up. Next thing we're going to do is add the grease fitting that goes right there. A little dab of anti-seize. This should thread right in. An 8mm. Just snug it up. Now we've got the hub, bearings, seals, shock absorbers for the sprocket, brake shoes, grease, fitting. So the rear hub itself is pretty much complete. This is the sprocket carrier. I do have a new sprocket. I haven't mounted it yet. Not sure when I'm going to do that, whether I'm going to do that a bit later on in this process or not, but eventually obviously that engages, these fingers engage with the slots in the push drive like that. This is part of the rear hub in my right hand here, I do have some new components. I have a new nut and a new bushing because this has got some wear on it. And this actually fits through here. Well, I'll show you how it fits. I'll take it apart here a second for you. This fits through like that. This bushing goes through and into the seal. I'm not going to put it in right now because I've got a new bushing and a new nut to go with it, but essentially it goes in something like that. So somewhere along the way I'm going to have to mount the sprocket to the carrier. I'm not going to do that right now, I don't think. Now that I've thought about it for a few minutes. I think what I'm going to move on to now is lacing of the wheels. That is the NOS hubs that I have and spokes, and getting the wheels laced up. So that's it for this rear hub assembly video. I hope it was helpful for you. Found it of interest or entertaining if nothing else. And that'll be it for this video. So as usual, thanks for watching.